Hello, in today's podcast, we will discuss a very important topic, which is... Wait a minute, this is not a podcast. Okay. In today's very revealing episode, we will touch on the history of the computer games, which will end with the mention of quantum computers, because that is what the task says. We must mention quantum computers. So, we start from a really long time ago. Back in 1947, when a man named Thomas Oliver Goldsmith Jr. and S. Raya created the first prototype of a computer game called Couched Tube amusement device, which had little to do with fun, because it was an analog missile simulator using electron tubes. So it was still better than Gothic, but it was far from being called good. Games with graphics were created after the ADSC computer was created. Mathematicians have no talent for giving good names, but back to them up. It was the first calculating machine with a display, and the first game that was created using it is considered to be Noughts and Crosses, abbreviated OXO, which was actually just a different name for tic-tac-toe, but in digital form. Another breakthrough was the game Tennis for Two. It was the first game to use a controller for getting input and was displayed on an oscilloscope. Yes, on that thing for testing the voltage. Bit of an unusual choice, but it just works. It had very basic ball physics and gameplay that holds your attention for about 10 seconds, I think. Which means you're probably already bored with what you see on the screen. Another innovative title was Space War. Some of you may know it because of piracy, but here we are talking about the game itself, which was created by Steve Russell. Yes, that's Steve Russell. I don't know who he is either. The game itself stood out primarily because it contained vector graphics. So in practice, it's simply consisted of various points connected by lines that could be zoomed indefinitely. Now we make a jump 7 years later, when the first interactive programs were primarily academic productions. Some people, noticing the enormous potential, began to strive to popularize this solution. They were led by Raffle Beer, who wanted to create a game connected to the TV. He designed interactive control designs with a really interesting idea. For example, a light gun that detected where we would hit when aiming at a CRT TV. On 1st October, he presented the first game console called Brown Box. Amazing name for something so unique, but it turns out that not only mathematicians can't come up with names, but engineers too. The console itself had very simple games, such as volleyball, football, or a simple game using a light gun. After the success of this product, he sold the rights to this well-named product to Magnavox. As a result, the Magnavox Odyssey console was created, and wow, this name sounds somehow. At least, it doesn't have a box in the name, but if anyone is wondering what happened to this wonderful company, it was bought by Philips. and after years of failure, because Philips stopped meaning anything. If anyone noticed and wonders where are arcades, we just reached this point. Nolan Bashal, as a professional plagiarist, decided to copy the previously mentioned Tennis for Two and create the legendary game Pong, which Heisel brought out the first commercial success in the game industry on such a scale. Other companies sniffing money started to pop up like mushroom after rain. First came Taito with his Gunfight. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak created Breakout, the prototype of the Arkanoid. Famous Space Invader by Tomohiro Nishikado. Then there was Pac-Man by Namco or Donkey Kong and Mario Bros, both by legendary Shigeru Miyamoto, which give us the figure of the Red Plumber. In short, there were games to play. After the great success of arcades, stockholders started to invest toward gaming consoles, which caused the creation of a lot of low quality and creepy games. The breaking point Atari 5500, which due to the repeat takeover of the market by personal computers, such as the ZX Spectrum or Commodore 64, led to the collapse of video games. In short terms, it meant that the gaming industry was in decline. This was mainly due to the terrible low quality of the games released at that time, including the infamous case of AT, the extraterrestrial in the lead. Despite the crash of console games, PC games enjoyed great popularity. We got a lot of text adventure games, Will Croucher's Adventure and Zork from students from Massachusetts. The first released RPG, Akalabev. It may not look too impressive, but it's still better than League of Legends. 2 years later, Castle Wolfenstein was released, which started the genre not shooters but stealth games. We came to the premiere of the already mentioned ZX Spectrum computer, which was able to display color graphics at an affordable price, which gave birth to a huge number of classic games. Of those worth mentioning, we have SimCity or Peter Molyneux's Populous, destroyer of children's smiles, one of the biggest fraudsters in the industry, but that's a topic for another material. Going back to the crash of the console market, after a few years, the value of the entire market dropped by as much as 97%. After a few years of bankruptcy, when everyone thought that it was the end of the gaming industry, the market was saved thanks to horror of horrors, Nintendo, by releasing the NES console, as well as selling games with the Nintendo quality seal, which ensured that the games you bought would not turn out to be another ET. After Nintendo's success, again imitators came, Sega among others, which responded with its Sega Master System, which displayed a larger color palette and greater power than the NES, did not compare to it in terms of sales. The second attempt, which was the Sega Mega Drive, started to become a real competitor to Nintendo. So Nintendo, feeling the breath on its neck, released the successor of NES, Super NES, that nomenclature in the 19s, which displayed better graphics, had less effective marketing, which made the less war balanced. So we came to the next generation of 42-bit consoles, which was launched by Sega Saturn, with a late false start resulting from terrible decision of the management.
Nintendo 64 with brilliant launch titles, the first PlayStation which won mainly due to its low price, and Atari Jaguar, which was actually the nail in the coffin for Atari, which never received from it. But the generation itself introduced something unique to games, specifically a whole new dimension, despite various attempts to emulate the third dimension in various older games. Only here has it become something so common. Meanwhile, quite the castling were happening on the PC market, where companies such as Blizzard had been founded, publishing StarCraft or Diablo. Valve released Half-Life and then a mod for it, known as Counter-Strike. An important milestone showing the development of the entire gaming industry turned out to be Crisis, which showed what computers were capable of using a large number of complex computer technologies. The next big thing in the gaming turned out to be motion games, thanks to the Nintendo Wii, which weren't really anything that interesting, they just existed, and were replaced by VR in the next 15 years. Despite that for the next few years there haven't been any major revolutions, only evolutions, faster discs, new technologies such as ray tracing or DLSS, new trends such as open worlds in-game or battle royale. Because of the lack of revolutions, developers have started to be more creative about art style in games. So nowadays graphics started to go in another direction, not realistic but more creative and abstracted. So we get games like Cuphead, Hollow Knight, Lethal Company, Hades, A Hat in Time, Okami, The Unfinished Swan, Yoshi Woolly World, Teardown, and many more. Yeah, that's a lot of creative graphics, but going to realistic one, the graphics goes even further forward, to a record which perfectly shows what today's computers are capable of. If I said, that's the Urbex I recorded yesterday, you would probably trust me because it's so realistic. And now we make a smooth transition to quantum computers. Well, at the moment the use of quantum computers in the games does not make a lot of sense, because the only thing they really offer at the moment is the complete random switch would be neat, but it's not worth it. Maybe they are efficient, but it's too expensive to be worth at the time. At last now, because if this technology is developed, the future promises that it can turn games into even more beautiful experiences. I think we've reached the end, so like, subscribe and hit the arrow. Bye!